You gotta really get a big pull. Come on. Big. Big drive. Yeah.
I ain't happy. I'm feeling glad I got sunshine in a bag. I'm useless, but not for long. The future is coming on. I ain't happy. I'm feeling glad I got sunshine in a bag. I'm useless, but not for long. The future is coming on. It's coming on. It's coming on. It's coming on. It's coming on.
Finally, someone let me out of my cage. Now, time for me is nothing cause I'm counting no A's. Nah, I couldn't be there. Nah, you shouldn't be scared. I'm good at repairs and I'm under each snare. Intangible, bet you didn't think so I command you to. Panoramic view, look, I'll make it all manageable. Pick and choose, sit and lose, all you different crews. Chicks and dudes who you think is really kicking tunes. Picture you getting down in a picture tube, like you lit the fuse. You think it's fictional, mystical, maybe spiritual hero who appears in you to clear your view when you're too crazy. Lifeless to those, the definition for what life is. Priceless to you because I put you on the hype shit. You like it? Gun smoke, you're righteous with one toke. You're psychic among those, possess you with one go.
I'm feeling glad I got sunshine in a bag. I'm useless, not for long. The future is coming on. Ain't happy. I'm feeling glad I got sunshine in a bag. I'm useless, but not for long. The future is coming on. It's coming on. It's coming on. It's coming on. It's coming on.
The essence, the basics, without it you naked. Allow me to make this childlike in nature. Rhythm, you have it or you don't, that's a fallacy, I'm in them. Every sprouting tree, every child of peace, every cloud and sea. You see with your eyes and see destruction and demise. Corruption in the skies from this fucking enterprise. Now I'm sucked into your lives through rust, so not as muscles but percussion to provide with me as a guide.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Rest Period Podcast, the place where we take fitness beyond the gym. I'm your host, Isaac Riddle, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Kyle Lombardi and Matt Goggins.
Welcome back. We got a good one today. Talking conspiracy theories. I think something in the web doesn't want us to make this episode. We're on take 10, 15 here. Podcast was not working. They don't want us to record this one.
Yeah, we're on take 10 or 15 for sure. Podcast with a lot of technical difficulties today, but we're gonna have a good episode today. Like Matt was saying, it's a conspiracy theory episode. Matt's gonna start us off with the Fermi paradox, and then Kyle's gonna take it on Egyptian pyramids. We're gonna get into some alien stuff, and then I'm gonna round us off with just it's kind of a multitude of theories, but I'm gonna round us off with just the idea that there was advanced civilizations before ours in the past. So I think it's going to be a good one. But with that, boys, let's pop the Rogans. It's Rogan time.
Dangerous.
Cheers, guys.
All right, I think Matt Goggins over here is going to start us off, and I think he's the leader of the conspiracy theory, so I'm loving this. All right, let's get it, boys.
Yeah, we'll see where it takes us here today. Conspiracy theories. We've been talking about, conspiracies for a few weeks now, but we're going deep in the bag today. Not that deep, but we're going in the bag at least. I'll say that. But yeah, so I guess the first one we were gonna kind of crack the lid on was the Fermi paradox, which we got into a little bit, episode 3 when we were talking faith and endurance, but so I guess for those unfamiliar, Fermi paradox, it's kind of just about aliens in general, life on other planets. Why don't we hear from aliens? Do we think there's aliens out there? Figuring out ways to explain, why by all observable measures we're alone in the universe. I guess any thoughts from you boys? What do we think? Aliens? Real, fake, walking among us?
I don't believe in aliens. I'm going to start off by saying that. I think, I guess I understand why people do believe in aliens because, and I think you're going to get into this a little bit, but the little bit that I do know about the Fermi paradox is that it's basically a theory that if we know that life can exist in the universe because we're living and the universe is infinite, it would lead you to believe that it's impossible to say that there isn't life outside of this, what we know there to be. So that's kind of my understanding of it. I don't know if you could add more to it.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the Fermi paradox itself, like, the term Fermi paradox, that basically is just the idea that um, we think there's near infinite space, but we haven't heard from any other species of, living organisms on any other planet. So, like, why is that? Um, and then as you kind of dig into it, it's like, well, if we think the universe is really billions of years old, humans have been around for, you know, maybe 10,000 years, kind of unclear, depends on who you ask. But so, if you have a billion years of history, you have 10,000 years of humanity, and we went from throwing rocks at each other to nuclear war. What could happen if you had, a million more 10,000 year periods, right? Like, because if we say the universe is 10 billion years old, what that means is basically, you have a million entire history of humanities sequentially, right? And so, like, if we're already here, if you give us another 10,000 years, where would we be? Like, we'd probably be on all of the planets in our solar system. We'd probably be exploring kind of nearby galaxies. So the whole question is, like, why don't we see any other civilizations out there? Why is there, like, no other evidence of, other beings that have done that?
Is there like a consensus on how old the universe is? Do they have like a number that they throw around?
I mean, I've seen a lot of 13.6 billion years has been stated as, like, that's kind of what everyone believes. I agree with kind of Matt, but I also agree with Hulk. I'm not, like, I don't believe in aliens because I don't see evidence of it. But it actually makes sense. Like, if we're here, and how many galaxies exist outside of what we have, it's kind of hard to debate that maybe something does exist, right? Like, you can't really say it doesn't because we don't know. And that might play into, like, the rare earth hypothesis. Like, are we just that rare, right? Like, where we are just special. I think we are, obviously, and I believe in God and all the things we talked about in episode 3. But, does the Bible talk about no aliens? I'm not so clear on that. It doesn't really say. So maybe that does play into what you guys are saying, but I don't know if you can expand on that, but there's probably something more to the story, right? Is kind of what we're saying, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And you can, I guess, at the end of the day, we've said this before, but, like, you can debate a ton about, like, how old is the universe, what's out there. Do we think humanity is unique? And it's kind of like, I think the whole, like, point behind the Fermi paradox is, like, at what point do you believe theory and at what point do you believe, like, practice, right? So it's like, it's pretty easy to say, I can't talk to somebody from Mars, right? I can't talk to an alien. But, like, if I measure it all and, like, do the math, it's like, well, I'm like, well, I should be able to, like, or not from Mars, but, there should be some signs of life somewhere else. Like, it doesn't really make sense that there'd be none. And
The dog is very loud in the background. So we're having a early intermission to put the dog in its place.
While Matt's gone, I want to talk about fantasy football with Hulk because we really believe that fantasy football is a very important topic. So, Alec Pierce, probably a pretty good receiver this year. I'm kind of feeling, Jonathan Taylor from the Packers, Jordan Love, Josh Jacobs could be a real hit. Anyways, move on.
Talking about the Fermi paradox, and you started talking about the math associated with it. So you can just kind of pick it up there.
yeah, I guess so. One thing that's kind of interesting, like, if you get into the more analytical about the paradox, is, like, there's kind of a few different reasons why we would not know about alien life. Like, one is no alien life exists, which, if no alien life exists, period, that implies that we're extremely rare, right? That's kind of, and there's something, like, cool to that, of, like, humanity and Earth can't be replicated. I mentioned this before, but if you believe in the Big Bang and you believe the universe is 13 billion years old, there's basically trillions of Earth-like planets out there that exist. And most of them, you could get to in, you gave basically an organism like a million years, they'd eventually get to other Earth-like planets. So there would be like some, they would basically reach each other. So yeah, I mean, the first theory is like humanity is rare, which means that nothing else has even evolved to our point, which is, again, like, it's a beautiful idea. But if you like talk to someone who's very scientific, they'd be like, yeah, that's kind of a BS. Like, there's no way that that's true if we actually believe what we're observing around us. The second theory is other things exist like humanity, but none have evolved to the place that we have, which is, again, that's kind of like extremely rare, because it's like kind of the same thing as the first one, but we just happen to be the first species that even got to this point where we can like communicate with each other, where we're like multicellular organisms, where we have consciousness and, like, I don't know, autonomy over our bodies. So like, and then another theory is that other things exist like humanity, but they can't evolve to a place where they can actually like travel around the universe, or like where they could contact each other. That one's a little scary because it's like, if it's common for things to evolve to the point of humanity, yet we haven't contacted any other organization or whatever civilization, it implies that there's some filter that like stops things from developing to that point. And so it's like, what is that, right? Like, is it nuclear kind of war? Is it, a war in general?
I think, I've heard of this great filter, kind of this theory too, where, okay, people have said there might be aliens, but they don't want to have contact with us. Or, why is the universe cut off from, why do humans not see aliens, or why do we not view these things? But maybe there is a reason, right? And that's maybe the point, is like, I think that's what you're trying to say too, is like, maybe the whole reason we can't see aliens, or we can't go further in the galaxy, is we were not designed to do that. And that's okay. It's like, it's not really, it doesn't hurt or help me, I guess. I mean, as a human on Earth, if I go see an alien, 2 billion, stars, I don't know, wherever, right? I don't know if that would really help me. It's like, it doesn't really impact me as a person, right? So the way I view it is like, I think it's definitely possible, right? Like, it's definitely possible. The math makes sense, right? There's so much stuff out there. I've actually studied and I researched, like, did the Bible say anything about this? Did God say anything about it's not clear, right? Like, there's not really a clear answer. So I think humans are special. And like I said, the rare earth theory is pretty clear. Like, we are pretty special, and I think we know that. Like, we have planets that we have observed and looked at, and there's no life there. So like, we are something different than other planets that we can even observe. But maybe that's just maybe I'm just kind of ridiculous when I think that, right? Maybe I'm ignorant to, yeah, there's probably 100,000 other Earths. I just don't. How am I supposed to know, right?
Is it possible, and this is just me spitballing, that if we were one of the first planets to start developing life, that we're just so far ahead in our development, and that there is life on other planets, but they're like still in the earlier stages, and the reason we're not seeing life now is because we're like the first kind of planet where life has advanced far enough to where, we're like multicellular, like advanced organisms.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's possible. So like, one of the theories of like, what is the great filter, like what's the thing that makes us unique, is that like, it's really hard for organisms to become multicellular. So like, that basically means there's like a theory that there's a lot of other planets that exist, but there's only like single cell animals on it, because like, I guess the probability that like a cell happens to split and then still be a singular being is like very low. So that's kind of an interesting one. But like, the counter argument is kind of like, there's been some huge extinction events that at least a lot of scientists believe in, right? Like the dinosaurs, other things. Like, what, and maybe Earth is just like more hospitable to like life than other planets, but like, why is it that we've had like huge phases of like the development of life, the loss of life, development of life, loss of life, and like that wouldn't happen anywhere else? I think is kind of contradictory to what we've seen happen on Earth.
Well, I mean, I guess my counter to that would be, it's potentially possible that we're just so extremely lucky that after these like massive extinction events, there was like a remnant of life left, like it didn't completely annihilate all life, and because there was like a little bit of life left, we were able to recover after like long periods of time.
I was looking up because you guys told me your theories you wanted to talk about. I didn't know much about this stuff, to be clear. So I was looking this stuff up and I found the Hiawatha crater in Greenland. I don't know if you guys have probably heard of it, but that was a big deal on like what you guys are talking about. They really thought that that was a huge event. Like it destroyed, all kinds of animals and humans and all these things. And I was looking it up, like, yeah, that probably happened many more times, right? Like when you really think about it, I think that's Matt's point is like, I can't debate that. Like there's clear as day. There's probably so many things that have happened, and somehow we survive, right? We come back, we thrive, but it's kind of hard to say that that hasn't happened a lot here and that it doesn't happen anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, there's like the concept of like these mass extinction events kind of break up the periods that our planet has gone through. So, just like one off the top of my head that I can think of right away is the KT extinction, which is revolving around the big crater in Mexico, like on the Yucatan. It's considered to be the extinction event that wiped out the dinosaurs, or most of them, and it led to the rise of mammals, which eventually led to the rise of humans. So it kind of goes back to what I was saying before, that potentially these extinction events, because they didn't wipe out everything, it was possible that over the course of a long time, we were able to, like, life on Earth was able to recover. And because there was also, like, you would have an extinction event, and then there were long periods of time that the Earth was pretty stable. So I don't know if you can speak to that.
Well, something I think is interesting, kind of like what you're saying. Obviously, Earth is like a very life-giving planet. Like the chemistry and like the makeup of our atmosphere like lends itself well to life evolving. Um, Again, like there's probably countless planets like Earth in the universe, but like something I think is kind of fascinating is like when you study chemistry, like one of the core things is like the idea of entropy. So like when you think about atomic states, it's like basically all things over time go to their lowest energy state, which means going to basically nothing and like no life. But like Earth is like a total counterexample to that. Like we have millions of years worth of evidence that like that's not true, at least on this planet. So like I mean, I guess like people would argue that like, well, Earth is like an exception, and like if you look at the whole system of the universe, like stuff kind of does go to its lowest energy state, but like clearly there's like a lot of variance in that, and like you can get a place like Earth that has so much life.
Yeah, and I mean, just thinking about life outside of Earth, are there planets that we've observed that are Earth-like enough that there could be life on them? Like, are there planets that we've observed that we think if we took a living thing from Earth and shot it up into space into a rocket ship and dropped it on that planet, it would be able to live?
Well, Elon Musk thinks we can do it on Mars, which is, kind of crazy. I don't know if you guys have heard like his idea is basically you nuke Mars repeatedly until you build like an ozone with just all of the basically he's got, some chemists somewhere that have come up with this formula that like if you blow up the right things on Mars, eventually it will concentrate in the right way, and like it will create, I guess, poles the way that you would need them on the planet, and you would have like an ozone and an atmosphere, and it would be life supportive, which is kind of a crazy concept.
Do you think Elon will get people on Mars within 10 to 15 years, Matt? What do you think?
I don't think that quick. It's hard for me to say with him because like it's hard to tell what's like a marketing ploy, like what's for Tesla stock and SpaceX stock, and what's actually like for humanity. Because like he's definitely the smartest guy in the room in most rooms, right? But like, is he just kind of bullshitting, or is he actually like have this altruistic ideal?
Well, the funny thing about Mars and the funny thing about, I guess, Elon's endeavor is I feel like we have the technology to get somebody on Mars. We just have to do it. Like, I don't think it's like a secret that we have the capabilities to get someone on Mars, because like when you think about like the moon and how we were able to get to the moon, we very quickly got someone to the moon. And I think it's because obviously the Cold War was going on. We had that motivator to get someone on the moon and get them on there quickly. I think we could get somebody on Mars within the next 5 to 10 years if we just do it. Like if Elon is really serious about putting somebody on Mars, I think we'll easily do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's true at this point for sure. Like if he decided to put a line item on his SpaceX financials and say like we're putting somebody on Mars this year, he could do it. And just like, can he convince the right people that it's the right time to make that happen? And it's risky because like imagine they send someone up there and the rocket explodes or the person gets left there. Like it's not just that person's life. Obviously that's a bummer for that guy, but also like it could tank the whole mission depending on like why it fails, right? So it's a pretty high stakes decision.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, a lot of people died when we were trying to get to the moon. Because we were pursuing getting somebody on the moon so aggressively, there were people that died in our pursuit to get people to the moon. And I would assume to get somebody to Mars would be the same way. Like if we really want to get somebody to Mars and we want to get somebody to Mars now, it's I think it's just part of it. Like there's going to be accidents because space is just such a hostile environment that I would find it pretty surprising if we could get somebody on Mars within the next 5 to 10 years in that quick of a timeline and not run into any issues like that.
The other question I have for you two both, I mean, you've studied it a little bit more than me. Why rebuild or build in a civilization on a different planet?
Well, I mean, Elon's whole argument is like, to make us tolerant to like a mass extinction event. Which is, I mean, there's some like validity to that, right? Like if we believe that those things have happened before, like it's probably good to have people somewhere else, but I don't know. I don't know. There's probably better things we could do with that. Actually, it kind of leads me to like, there's kind of a thought experiment, which is like, is it better to give one person $1 billion or a billion different people $1? Like which one does more net good for humanity? And like, I kind of am of the mind that it's better to give one person $1 billion and then, obviously you run the risk that's like not the right person, but then that can create kind of like compounding effects. And like space travel in general, but like any like super difficult physical mission that people have gone on, like it always spins off the greatest technology. Like so much development in like vehicles and like medicine came out of just like the space race. So
yeah, I 100% agree with you with what you just said. The exploration drives innovation. So throughout our entire history, what the biggest driver for technological advancement has always been exploration. So when the Earth, like early humans, when they were like exploring the Earth, because that was kind of the first frontier, was obviously understanding and exploring our own planet. It drove the invention of boats to navigate the seas, airplanes to fly in the sky, and then obviously the race to the moon. I mean, technology absolutely exploded because of not just the Cold War, but also just the race to the moon in general. But I kind of want to get back to Mars a little bit. And I kind of have a question, which is kind of related to your Fermi paradox, which is, and this is kind of another thing I've been thinking about in regards to this, which is kind of the reverse of what I was saying before, is so like when you look on a planet like Mars, there's evidence to say that Mars a really long time ago had like liquid water on it, had like an atmosphere, was like actually more hospitable than it is now. Is it at all possible that there were advanced civilizations before us that kind of died off and now we're the only one within our sphere of observable? I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but you get what I'm saying.
yeah, like were there mass civilizations that were advanced before modern humanity that we just can't see anymore? I don't know. What do you think, Lombardi?
I think, once again, I think what we have on Earth is rare. I think, God, Jesus, all these things we've talked about a lot. I would break it down like my only question is, I think we're rare. I think we're special humans. And I don't disbelieve that there could be more, right? I'm not saying that, but Yeah, I kind of question Elon's motives, and I think Matt was trying to say that, but I kind of question his motives and like, okay, let's put people on a different planet. And I think I've actually read him say, he's like, well, I want to, yeah, it might be a mass extinction thing, but he also has mentioned like, you know, maybe bringing really rich people, or it's like, well, you're just so humans in nature, I mean, they get along, but they also, they're sinners, they have issues, there's wars. It's like, yeah, you just go to another planet to have more the same. See, that's what I don't understand is like, and he's also talked about, people need to have more kids. So he has like 13 kids. Not really the way I would think about it, right? So it's kind of the same with me with Mars, with him and his ideas. I think it's a good idea, but I also think Earth is amazing. So, yeah, I would say like Mars probably had something, right? They had, I don't know if they had humans, but they probably had something more than we see now. It's hard to verify though, right? So I'm just saying with Elon, I think he's really smart. I just question his motives on X, and it's the children part and the Mars part.
I think I kind of disagree. I think exploring other planets and potentially trying to become a multi-planet species is definitely extremely beneficial for us, because I don't think it's a matter of if another mass extinction event happens on Earth. I think it's a matter of when. I think you can pretty much say with 100% certainty that there will be another mass extinction event on Earth at some point, just because there's so much evidence that there's been multiple ones in the past. So I think it really just becomes, we either figure out a way to prevent mass extinction events on Earth, like we advance so far beyond where we're at now that we could repel asteroids or do stuff like that to completely prevent those events from happening, or we go to other planets so that if something bad happens on Earth, we have more humans somewhere else or all over. And I also just think, like I was saying before, I think humans are kind of programmed to explore and continue to expand. And I think that really drives technological advancement and also just the advancement of our species. That's kind of my thought on it. I don't know if you guys have a different view, Matt Goggins.
Yeah, no, I think it's like I agree. It's good for mass extinction, but like there's probably a 50-50 shot that whoever goes on Mars goes to war with us. like look at like North America. It's like yeah, it was you know discovered and developed by Europe, and then they went to war. That's like happened on every single landmass separated by a body of water. So like it's probably gonna happen if there's two land masses and a bunch of space between.
Are we just moving wars? Is my point. I just, I agree though, Hulk. I mean, it's good though to advance technology and do a lot of that stuff. I just wonder, is Elon playing God? And that's my question is, why are we trying to reinvent the wheel when we already have the beautiful thing? That's my point, I guess. Like, yeah, let's make Earth better versus trying to go somewhere else. I get the whole mass extinction, but if you believe in God and Jesus, you're going to heaven. So why try to avoid that is my question.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like it's just kind of smart people problems. Like you're right that like anyone that's gonna devote their life to trying to like leave Earth probably has should work a bit on their mental, but like at the same time, like if you're someone who's that brilliant, like an Elon Musk or like a whatever an Einstein, like you become pretty immediately aware of like things like we're talking about, like atrophy or just like solar flares and gamma rays and asteroids, and you can basically come up with a billion ways that Earth's going to implode. So like I kind of get the anxiety around it, and also like I mean the classic thing is like the easiest thing to sell people is a cure for their anxiety, right? So like if your cure is, oh, we'll go to Mars, like yeah, that's a great way to become a trillionaire, like look what Elon's doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you think about it from a pure religious standpoint, obviously the idea of, trying to build civilizations elsewhere might not be as attractive. And the idea of a mass extinction wiping us all out is also not necessarily super believable, I would say, for somebody that is religious. Because if you believe in the Bible, you know that the world is going to end because of what's outlined in Revelation. So if you believe that is like a literal account of what the future is going to look like, I mean, it would be pretty hard for you to believe that we need to go visit other planets because we need to avoid some mass extinction. And I mean, I think there is some validity in the fact that maybe, the Earth is so perfectly placed that we're going to, and because of like Jupiter, like there's a lot of evidence to suggest that the Earth is, like Kyle was saying, is really unique in the fact that it's not just perfect in terms of its proximity to the sun, the fact that we have an atmosphere and water and stuff that can support life, but like our location in our solar system is also really key because Jupiter kind of plays almost like a shield that just like either sucks in all the asteroids that are coming our way or shoots it right out of the solar system. But yeah, obviously, if you have like a really strong religious framework, I don't think exploring and expanding to other planets or worrying about a mass extinction event that isn't revelation is really in the cards for you.
Yeah, I had an Uber driver a couple weeks ago convincing, or he had some interesting theories on Revelation. That was quite a conversation.
Can you expand on that? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, at risk of getting demonetized. No. so, so he was saying, I mean, well, first he told me that he had built skin flesh sensing robot technology for the government. I don't know if I believe any of that. And he was telling me that basically Elon and Trump are the monsters outlined in Revelations 13, which then you Google it and there's like, a lot of subreddits about it. Yeah, it's interesting. People are always doomsaying, like, everyone thinks that their life is kind of the end all be all and that they see the pattern that's going to destroy the universe. It's just like it's a mental health thing, I think.
I would agree. That's maybe outside our realm of what we know. But it's funny, like if you look at it, and Hulk talked about it, I think I agree with him a lot. Like, if you believe that the Bible's true and Jesus is coming back to save us, I wouldn't worry about any of this stuff. And that's what I question Elon on. I understand he's trying to advance technology, but why not advance technology by giving everyone free power or giving, there's all these things that we could do that might save us a little bit of money, hassle, go down the list. And he's doing some of that stuff. He's definitely doing some good things, but yeah, I think, just on my end, I would say I would never go to Mars. So I'm going to make that clear. I would never go to Mars. I would not take my family to Mars. When I wake up on Earth, I'm so happy, and I don't really need to go anywhere else. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say is why would I need to go to Mars?
Yeah, I don't think, if you don't want to go to Mars, you don't have any reason to go to Mars. I do think that there are people on Earth that will want to go to Mars. I think there's actually a large amount of people that
I would go to Mars. I would definitely go to Mars.
Yeah, I'm just saying I think I personally wouldn't go to Mars either. Just to be fair, I would stay on Earth.
So like, what would the round trip time need to be for you to go to Mars? Like, how long would it have to take for you to be willing to think about it?
Okay, fine. You talk me into it if I can get there in one day. Go.
Yeah, if I can just visit Mars and not have to lose years of my life just to visit it, I would go to Mars for a day or a week if it's like a vacation.
You know who wants to go to Mars right now? Iran.
That's probably true.
I got a question. I got a question that's in relation and more relation to what we're supposed to be talking about. So kind of bringing it back to aliens, bringing it back to the Fermi paradox a little bit. So I had a question, and you both feel free. You both can answer it. It's a question that I've thought about. It's something that's come up even in church. So let's just say for a second, this is kind of a thought experiment. If aliens do exist, so let's just lay the framework right away for this thought experiment. Aliens exist. They're out there. Do you think that is in contradiction to the Bible at all? Do you think it matters if they exist? Like, does it change what the Bible says is true? Or is it maybe just another thing that was omitted from the Bible because it's not necessary for our salvation to know that information?
That's a great question. I think that it doesn't affect our religion or faith in God and Jesus, because they specifically say in the Bible that humans. Here are your guidelines, humans. So to be fair, they didn't really tell us about anything else. So that's okay. Like I would not mind. So if information came out, once again, evidence is there. Okay, like it doesn't affect me in a negative way. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's kind of different things. It definitely expands the scope of the Bible. Like I think there would be a lot of kind of new interpretations of some of like the stories in the Bible, but I think that we kind of talked about this before, but like the core truths and like the kind of the facts of the human experience, I don't think change.
Well, I personally think that the Bible directly contradicts the existence of any life outside of Earth. I think that if it found out that aliens do in fact exist outside of the Earth, it would kind of throw the Bible into question a little bit. And the only reason I say that is because, kind of like what you were alluding to, the existence of aliens kind of poses some serious theological issues with a lot of the stories and a lot of the philosophies that we draw from the Bible. And maybe if we could, spend some time just like talking about it and figuring out like, oh yeah, like this actually does fall in line with the stories that are in the Bible. But I that's just my thought on it. I think that the existence of life outside of Earth really really poses issues for a lot of the things that I hold to be true. So you guys can expand on it if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely makes like the gospel at least like harder to reason about, because you're like, all right, if we're made in God's image, and how do we reconcile like why Jesus came in human form, those kinds of things. Yeah.
I guess one caveat to what I was saying is if we see the aliens outside of Earth as just another form of creation. So if we view them like the animals, for example, if we view them like animals and we say they exist, they're part of God's creation and they're good, but they're not human. So in that way, I could see how that could potentially fix all of the problems that I was thinking of off the top of my head. Because if aliens are like animals, they don't have a soul, they're not made in the image of God, that could potentially fix all of the problems that I was thinking about.
yeah, I think you're right. I mean, also, does it say there's dinosaurs on the Earth? Did it say? I mean, there's a lot of things it doesn't say, so we shouldn't assume that the Bible says everything. So I don't think you need to use the Bible as like, it doesn't explain every event that happens. It doesn't explain, I mean, it explains a lot, but I think it is truly like it's rules for humans. And it's kind of like, okay, God was giving us these certain things. And if you view it that way and you take all the stories, I would say, yeah, you're probably right, Hulk. Like there's some stories that, yeah, you'd have to look at like, whoa, wow, that's kind of an interesting play with the aliens out there. How do I think about that? I get what you're saying. I definitely agree. So we'd have to, I guess, reevaluate,
Yeah, I guess I kind of want to take a step back into something we were getting into earlier, but talking about like previous civilizations on Earth and like how advanced really were they. Yeah, I'm curious what you guys think. Like, do we think that was Earth ever as populated as it is today? Was there ever, like an internet? Was there ever these kinds of crazy communications?
We can kind of go out of order here, but that was kind of where my topic was going to get more into, was the idea that, and we can switch topics. We can go to my topic. So it's fine. My topic that I was going to bring to this podcast was essentially the idea of what Matt just said. The idea that there were more advanced civilizations in the past that were potentially even more advanced than us, or that there were other industrialized civilizations, at least in the past. And I guess the evidence of sort of this is just the idea that there could have been more advanced civilizations in the past, that with how old we think the Earth is, enough time could have passed that they could have, there might not be a ton of evidence of it today. Like, that stuff could have decayed and disappeared. And then, kind of connecting to Kyle's a little bit, because he's going to talk about the pyramids. I've heard some stuff in relation to the pyramids that the Egyptians might have had some knowledge about construction and architecture that was a little bit more advanced than what we're at today. They might have even been at the level of understanding in terms of like engineering and stuff from where we are today to be able to pull off something like that.
Or, I mean, I think there was definitely a lot before. I mean, it's just everything did decay, and it's now, oh, we can't find it, so it must not be there. I don't think that's true. Okay, for one, I've been to Iceland. I've been to a bunch of glacier-based places. Why? Okay, there's huge glaciers that formed, and they're all pretty much gone. So think, what if there was a civilization under that glacier that formed? Well, how the hell are you going to find that, right? Like, so my point, so there's so many things that shift in our climate, and people call it climate change. Well, yeah, glaciers were on Iceland. Yes, I saw it. I was there, and it is it's melting, shocking. But at some point, it wasn't there, and it became what it became, right? So how do we know there's not a bunch under Antarctica and a bunch under Iceland? You don't know. And I think there's something there for sure. I mean, there's got to be something there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of like what I think is the biggest evidence for it is we've observed times in our history where we have gone from places where our level of advancement has gone up and down. There's been events in human history that have caused us, like the fall of Rome, or the Black Death, like events that happened in our history that took us from a place of like extreme heights to, we lost a lot of that information. Like, it got lost, like the burning of the Library of Alexandria. Like, we have no idea, because of that, there could have been stuff that they knew back then that we don't even have information on today. So I guess if you guys want to add on that.
I think it's very conceivable. There was, I mean, the one I always hear is like they think ancient Mayans and Incans were like actually maybe even like 10 or 100 times more populous than like some of the models. And I mean, obviously the Egyptians are another one, but like it's, and also like you can go online and see like models of like what would happen to New York City if all humans just got zapped off the earth, right? Like in 10 years, what would New York look like? Well, like, plants would be growing into buildings. In 100 years, skyscrapers would be falling. In 1,000 years, streets would be unrecognizable. In whatever, 100,000 years, you would probably just see an island, right? Like you might not even know there was ever a city there. So like when you zoom out and look at the time that we think has passed and like all the different iterations of life that could have been on Earth, like I don't think it's that crazy. Like the internet itself would basically be irrecoverable after like 10 years if no one was maintaining it.
Or how about the lost city of Atlantis? Like, there's all these like, oh, this crazy thing that everyone talks about, but where did it go? Once again, I mean, guys, think like I've been to Iceland, and I remember talking to this guy who was like, yeah, climate change, glaciers are going like that. If you've ever been to this country, it looks like it's a alien world. I'm telling you, it makes no sense. And I've been there, I walked there, and I'm like, wow, this is crazy. And I guarantee something happened there that we have no idea about. But it's just like, how do we know? We don't have the evidence again, but us three can speculate, because why not, right? Like, there's enough out there. The lost city of Atlantis, right? The Hall of Records, the stuff Hulk was talking about too. It's like, there's things out there that might exist that no one wants us to know about. Or maybe we just all don't know, because all humans and the history that we have, we've forgotten about it, right? It might be underground somewhere. We have no freaking idea. I definitely would say there's something. We can't be like, how did we get this intelligent without some ancestors that, like, how did Albert Einstein get to what he knew? I have no idea. Didn't his ancestors maybe know something? That's just a guess, but like Egyptians are one too, right? Like they knew so many things that don't make a lot of sense now that we look at it. And Hulk, you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like where I was going at before. I think there is definitely evidence, and I think that there's pretty good consensus on this, that our level of advancement has gone up and down throughout history. There have been times in our history where we were far more advanced than in other times. For example, the Roman Empire, when they were like at the height of their power, were far more advanced than a lot of the medieval societies, feudal societies that made up the Middle Ages. Or the Egyptians in, ancient Greece. They had like a level of understanding on like math, science, philosophy, and the universe that people later on kind of lost. Like I've heard this actually a lot. Like there was a lot of debate, obviously, in the Middle Ages about the universe and the heliocentric model, or the idea that the Earth is the center of the universe. And there's evidence to suggest that we knew that this Earth was not the center of the universe way back during the Egyptian times, or the times of like ancient antiquity for like Greece and stuff like that. So I think there's undeniable that our level of advancement has gone up and down. But I guess like the antithesis of my conspiracy theory was there ever a time in history that is lost to us now that there was industrialized civilizations on the planet like ours, or more advanced than we are now?
Yeah, I mean, the classic example is like, how do they build the pyramids? How can you even move rocks that big, that far? And there's like the evidence around like the different kind of boring holes that they see in the rocks, that there was like something must have been mechanized and like powered by something non-human to actually like create that energy and drill. And another one that I think is a cool one is that Machu Picchu. If you go to the top, there's a couple of these massive rocks, like many, many, many ton rocks up on this little town perched up in the Andes Mountains. And it's like, how could you have ever lifted that without some sort of like machinery or like industrial, basically you need something that can generate power.
Yeah, and there's been some pretty unexplainable artifacts that have been found that are dated back way before the Industrial Revolution, that almost look like drawings of like machines. Like I thought I heard somewhere that they found like drawings that look like almost like tanks, or look like they had like steam power and stuff like that, like way before we even thought humans were capable of that. I don't know if you've heard of something like that, but
Yeah, I saw something like probably 2 weeks ago. They were claiming that they saw new hieroglyphics that showed spaceships and boats and tanks.
Yeah, I mean, that was actually on. I think Aaron Rodgers was saying when he went to the pyramids, he saw spaceships and submarines and hieroglyphics on the pyramids. He's like, this makes no sense. Like, what is going on right now? I don't know. Do you want to cover any more of your subject, or should we go to the pyramids?
I mean, we can dive into the pyramids and kind of come back. I think my topic is a little bit more broad, and if we want to just dive into the pyramids, I think we can dive into the pyramid.
Okay, awesome, guys. So, I'll just start us off a little bit on the pyramids. What I was going to talk about was, I mean, there's so much cool stuff with the pyramids and how are they so symmetrical. Go down the list, but I was just going to start us off with some newer research, and then these two guys, I mean, they know a lot about the pyramids, so they can talk more. But some researchers, Corrado Malanga and Filippo Biondi, they did what's called synthetic aperture radar technology on the pyramids. They found, they claim there's a vast underground city under the pyramid. And people have been talking about this for a long time. Like, there's some crazy stuff out there. But this is very, very recent and very interesting. And basically what they said is there's 8 vertical shafts right under the Great Pyramid, and there's also 2 large chambers extending 4,000 feet down under the pyramid. Now, that all sounds well and great. I'm here to say that makes no sense. Like, if this is true, this is very recent technology that was used. I have no clue what's going on. Guys, help me out.
Kind of sounds like you're describing Mark Zuckerberg's house in Hawaii, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I literally, well, it's kind of funny because I just started, I just recently watched some stuff and learned about some stuff for the pyramids. Like, I didn't even know there was like an interior to the pyramids before like a couple weeks ago. I thought it was just like a big structure that was like solid on the inside. But yeah, there actually are tunnels and like burial chambers within the pyramids. And I actually think the biggest mystery of the pyramids of Giza is the fact that the emperor, and I don't know his name, but the the Egyptian emperor that supposedly, or pharaoh, I guess they're called Egyptians call them pharaohs, that basically wanted the pyramid to get built. He's not even buried in there. At least they don't know. They haven't found his body. He was supposed to be buried in there, but they haven't found his body yet. I don't know if you know anything about that from your research.
Yeah, I mean, I read on that, and it said, yeah, the emperor, pharaoh, whatever you want to say, was the leader of all of this stuff. But my guess on that is, there's something more, right? I'm just saying, like, yeah, it was all for burial. It was all for, like, okay, these pharaohs. That's what they say the pyramids are for. I disagree. Now that you're looking at some of this stuff, like, why in the world are there all these things under the pyramid? Like, what's going on? And actually, before this research happened, everyone said, "Oh yeah, there might be some stuff under there," but no, it's not a vast underground city. It's not. Well, wait. Now that they did this technology, like, these guys are researchers. They found all this stuff. Like, why were they not trying to find this in the past? Like, are we just trying to not look at it, or is this technology actually fake? I see. It's hard to read, like, because obviously you read it online and you kind of see some stuff, and there's very famous people talking about it, but there's not really a clear answer what's going on. Because yeah, everything in the pyramids, it was supposed to be for pharaohs, right? It was supposed to be, and I've actually heard people say that the slaves built them. That's not correct either. There's actually skilled labor campouts next to the pyramids, right? So, like, how did they know how to do that at that precision? And then, it's just going down a list of things. And also, Orion's belt is connected to the pyramid. So, like, the 3 pyramids are almost in line with how Orion's belt is constructed, So how do they know how to kind of align those things? All very interesting questions. It's very fun to pose those questions.
Yeah, actually the biggest pyramid, which is the I think they're all called the Great Pyramids of Giza, but the biggest of the pyramids was it's actually perfectly aligned to north, south, and west. Like, it's perfectly aligned to the compass directions, and it was actually originally completely covered. They say it was actually originally completely covered in like marble. So there's like marble going all the way down it, and then at the very top it had like a golden like peak. They had like gold on it. But yeah, I think there's a few chambers, and there's evidence. I mean, we've seen it. They're as they were building the pyramid, they were building burial chambers as they went up in case the pharaoh died before it was finished. But I'm curious. I never heard of the underground city thing, other than the fact that there's like holes in chambers that we haven't necessarily explored. What's like the basis of that? There's a city underneath the pyramids.
Yeah, so these researchers, with this technology, were able to see, like I said, shafts and chambers and all these things under, and they actually were able to connect the fact that there might have been water down there, and that's where they're like, "What's going on here?" And that's what's very confusing. I don't know the answer specifically, but these researchers just came out with all this stuff, so I think we'll get to know more in the next few years. I would also say this. it's not clear that it's true. Okay, so this research is kind of interesting. It's new, but let's say in 2 years they say, well, these guys are full of what. Like, I can't verify that. I just know it's new information, and they said there was water at the bottom of this, and some people were trying to link that to like, oh, like, and this is it's in a desert. Like, how does that make any sense that that they built all this stuff? There's water connections underneath. And that's why they said there might be a vast underground city with the shafts and the chambers. Also the Nile River was really close to the pyramids when they were building it. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people are like, how do they get all this stuff to the pyramids, right? It makes no sense. But the Nile River did shift. Like, it was closer to the pyramids, and now obviously it's much farther away. So we don't really know all the answers. Like, it's kind of hard to know everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the idea that, some ancient pharaohs were building these massive structures to bury themselves and their 1,000 servants, like that's cool. Whatever. Like, I mean, people, it's almost like people probably, you hear that and it's like, all right, well, we can settle on that, good enough. But like, it seems reasonable that I'd be like, well, maybe there actually is something more to it, or like there's more like utility out of these things than purely just like a vanity project.
Yeah, I think actually even more mysterious from the fact that we haven't found the pharaoh that built the biggest of the pyramids. They haven't found his body. What's even more weird is that normally when they bury Egyptian pharaohs, they bury them with all of their like wealth and all of their like belongings and stuff. They haven't even found that. So it's just like, is it buried somewhere else? Like, we don't know. We don't really know where all that stuff is. I think that's even more that. I mean, I think it's more plausible that we can't find one body. I think it's less plausible that we can't find a bunch of buried treasure that's supposedly supposed to be with the body.
So I'm probably not gonna get this story exactly right, but I remember like there was a story on one of the first archaeologists that entered into one of the pharaoh's chambers in one of the Great Pyramids. He died, I think, from like a heart attack, and the story was like it was either he or his wife died from like a heart attack. And there was a story that at the same moment he died, his dog on the other side of the world died. There was like a weird like theory, whatever story around that. I gotta look that up because it was like, and I'm pretty sure they said it was like the first guy that entered the actual chamber of the pharaoh. Like, he died. I was either him or his wife died shortly after, and at the same time their dog died.
That was King Tut, wasn't it? Tut? I think it was King Tut's tomb. It's the curse at King Tut's tomb, and that because they found King Tut's mummy, and there's like this conspiracy that's basically going on that there's a curse in relation to that, and that anybody that has gone into the chamber or interacted with the body or touched anything in there was cursed. And like, it could just be a bunch of coincidences, but a lot of the people that did end up were there on the original like discovery mission did kind of die under suspicious circumstances or extremely convenient circumstances.
Yeah, something's going on. I think it's all, whatever. It's kind of like the U.S. government telling you, hey, here's the story. Go to the left. The Egyptians, whatever. Okay, don't go left with the Egyptian crap they're telling you. Go to the right. That's probably more, closely tied to the truth. There's something more to that story. I'd love to know. It's hard though, right? Like, hard to read through all these things, but it's just kind of cool that new research was allowed to go to the pyramids. They found some very interesting things that no one has ever thought was under the pyramids. I would actually say, like, okay, the King Tut's, the curse, all this stuff. Like, why don't you hear more about that? Why don't you hear, okay, the Egyptian government, do they want you knowing all this crazy stuff? No, right? They want you to go to the pyramids, pay a bunch of money. It's a tourism site. They don't want you to know the truth. They want you to think it's just this thing. And then they want you to leave, right? So I think there's more to the story, okay?
Go to the pyramid, snap a photo with your family, and get out of there. It's interesting when you were talking about water being under the pyramids. One of the theories for how the pyramids was built was actually that they used a water elevator basically they were able to build all of these canals and channels into the area where they were building the pyramid, and then essentially just let the force of water like float the rock to wherever they needed it, and then they could position it in a certain way. So that's an interesting theory. I don't know. Do you guys know any of the other theories for how it was built?
I don't. I just know the old movies of everyone lifting the rocks as a group.
All right, I can go through some of the theories that I know off the top of my head. So, uh, probably the most realistic of the theories are that they use some sort of ramp, and it's possible that if you get enough people pulling a giant boulder up a shallow ramp, that it's possible that they could have moved the stones with just like manual power and pulley systems. And one of the theories is the external ramp theory, which is basically that they just built an external ramp and the ramp kind of increased in size as the pyramid increased in size. But one of the main criticisms of the external ramp theory is that in order to continue to build up past a certain point, they would have had to increase the angle of the ramp to a point to where it would be almost impossible to pull a rock of that size up, or they would have had to extend the ramp like super far in order to keep like the nice shallow increase in incline. And that and they say there's no evidence found of remnants of like a really large ramp. So that's like one of the main criticisms of that one. And then there's another theory with a ramp. There's actually two more ramp theories. There's a theory of the ramp that they built a ramp around the outside. So they built like a ramp around the outside and they built it that way. And that way they could keep the increase of incline gradual so they could pull the rocks up. And then there's one where they built the ramp on the inside. There's an interior ramp as well. But there's criticism for that too, because there's like, oh, there's no like archaeological evidence that there was a ramp that they were using.
If you have me out in the sun in 110-degree weather with like 1,000 guys capable of pulling rocks up ramps, I'm definitely starting a riot. That's all I can say. I'm not sticking around for the pharaoh to build that thing.
I mean, this all just sounds like it wasn't human based, but anyways, I'm not really too sure. This was 10,000 years ago, mind you, right? These pyramids were built 10,000 years ago. How does that make any sense? Now, I mean, it might be true. This new technology, I think, disproves a lot of what the Egyptian government's trying to say. I think they're just lying. I have no clue. I have freaking no clue.
I mean, there's stories in the Bible, like in the Exodus story, of these Egyptians that were pretty close to the Pharaoh doing like these like pretty miraculous stuff. Because like one of the reasons in like the book of Exodus, like one of the very first signs that Moses gives to Pharaoh before like a curse comes is he like throws his staff on the ground and it turns into a snake. And the Egyptian Pharaoh basically says this isn't convincing enough because I have people on my staff that can do the same thing, and they grab like a wooden staff and throw it on the ground and it turns into a snake. So there's like some stories in the Bible that show that maybe the Egyptians had like magical powers or something, or like supernatural powers.
I mean, come on, yeah. Moses is actually a great example of there's something more going on.
Well, I mean, I think Moses was just getting it from God. But I don't know how to explain that for the Egyptians. It's pretty unexplainable. At least for Moses, I can say, yeah, God was giving him the ability to perform those miracles. But in the cases of the Egyptians, I have no idea. I have no idea at all.
About Goliath, what do we think about Goliath, Kyle? What's his training program look like?
So I think he was eating 500 pounds of steak a day, and he was 9 feet tall. Anyways, David kicked his ass. Anyways, yeah, sure, we're good.
David hit him with a stone in the head, and he died. It's pretty.
The original bullet.
It's pretty embarrassing to get killed by a pebble, but
all that steak didn't work, is what I'm saying.
But yeah, if Goliath was actually, if Goliath was actually as big as what the Bible believes you to be, what if the Egyptians had a whole army of Goliaths? That's how they built the pyramids.
So actually, that's a good point. So have you guys watched The House of David? It's a show on Amazon Prime. So they go through King David, but his earlier years and before Goliath, and the whole thing happens. And they basically portray there's a family of huge giants that, I mean, whatever height they are, I don't know, but they are monstrous. So we could contend, how do we know, right? Like, yeah, I mean, I don't know how tall Goliath was. I mean, there's portrayals of what he might have been, but yeah, in the House of David, if you guys watch it, it's a good show. But Goliath is in that he's probably 10 feet to 12 feet tall, right? He's humongous, and he's got a whole family of, his brothers or whatever, and they're very aggressive. And anyways, that could be part of what's going on. I have no idea, but it's kind of hard to know because it makes no sense from like, how did 10,000 years ago they built the pyramids, and now I don't know. Could we make those today? Probably. I'm just saying, like, to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense just from a rational side of me.
Yeah, I think the thing that's kind of interesting, and I was kind of talking about it before, is when we look at our past, there's seemingly lots and lots of stories about like these seemingly like magical supernatural phenomena that like people used to be able to do that we just don't see today. And I mean, you could always chalk it down as like, oh, it's just like hyperbole, or it's just like a myth or something like that. But like even in the Bible, like you see it all the time, like people that aren't necessarily getting their abilities from God because they're not like the centerpiece of the story are demonstrating supernatural abilities. I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
Well, it's kind of like to the original question of like how advanced were civilizations. Like if we had a big extinction event, people might write books about whatever Elon Musk and say, he was touching the sky, he was, exploring space, and like what relic would we even have of like his endeavors? Like what did see some big factory somewhere in Texas, and they'd be like, oh, this is where they were putting people on Mars from. Like that's just interesting to think like how it would look 10,000 years from today.
You could kind of think about it this way. Have you seen? There's this show on the History Channel that me, my dad, and my brother, we always watch it when we're at hotels, and we don't take it seriously. We just think it's funny. It's called Ancient Aliens, and there's these guys on there. They're like, we're ancient astronaut theorists. We believe that pretty much every event that could possibly happen in all of history, aliens were involved. They were involved in it all. They're the answer to everything. And like one of the main things they do is a lot of the stuff that happened in the Bible that people just say like, oh, that was God, was actually just aliens, because, God was doing these amazing things, these wonderful things. And, people back then didn't have the knowledge to basically be able to describe it any other way other than, oh, it's a miracle. Oh, it's a God that did it. Which, it could be true. Obviously I don't believe that, but but like even like if we just think about, there could be societies that existed at the same time that were at different stages of development. And let's say, one foreign person sees like, oh, what the Egyptians are capable of, and they chop that. When they write about it, it's like, oh, they're performing miracles. They're doing these like mythical, crazy stuff, when maybe in reality that's just like extremely exaggerated, and he's just explaining it in the best way he can.
Yeah, sometimes I just think people used to get out more. They used to have more vivid imaginations. Like even just like, you look at like the old pirate stories, like the things they saw at sea, or like, things, even just that kind of stuff, or like, the animals they thought were in the jungle and like in the woods. And like there's a lot of truth to those things. It's just like now we all just think we know everything. So like you don't have the same level of like the mystical part of it, I guess.
Yeah, when I was in Iceland, it was very mystical. That's actually a good word. So there's a bunch of like giant stories, myths. There's just all kinds of stuff like you just said, which kind of makes you think, huh, maybe something was here. Like, I mean, there's myths everywhere. There's signs. There's like, oh, giants used to live here. I'm like, what's going on right now? But yeah, I guess if you go in a different culture, America is very, very new, I guess. Iceland just so much different than America. You very mythical, very, very different than what we deal with. And if you go to China, if you go to even different religions, I mean, come on, like, there's so many things that we just don't know the answers to. Obviously, us three already talked about it, but we believe in a God and we believe in what we do. But people on the other side from a different religion, man, they think a lot differently than us. So, I don't know. I don't know what's right or true on that end. I know what I believe, and that's all I can stick with. So,
No, I mean, there's like Scandinavia. I think I'm not going to say they're unique, but there are some areas of the world that are unique in the fact that there's a lot of like mythical like stories and stuff like that surrounding them. And, there's a couple explanations for maybe that. Like, I know that like the Germany and like those kind of areas, they kind of have a little bit of that like mythicism around them. And a lot of that is based on the fact that they were never conquered by the Romans. Like the Romans tried to conquer them and they just kept like losing. And the idea that they're like, oh, the Germans, they hide in like this spooky forest with like fog and they have like a bunch of like magical powers to defeat the strongest empire in the world at the time. I think there's a lot of that, but it's like also in their culture, like the Germans, the Celts, the Vikings and all that. They had like a lot of beliefs that were very spiritual in nature and these kind of like mythical ideas about how the world works and what you can find in the woods, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like it's all just kind of like a matter of like embracing the unknown. It kind of reminds me of like a experience of mine like a couple years ago. Some big scuba diver. I was scuba diving in Belize. There's this thing called like the Blue Hole. It's like a big sinkhole down there, and basically it drops straight down. It goes to like 500 feet. You can only dive for like 150 feet, and you get to kind of these caverns, kind of go through with like the rocks overhanging up top. It's really cool. But anyways, as we go down, like a shark came up out of the hole. You can't tell what's down there. It just gets dark. It turns into nothing, and the thing like strafes by us and then like disappears back into the dark. And like you have that feeling of like, oh man, there could be like a kraken down there. Like I got no idea what's down there. And actually, while we were in the dive, I like bumped the top of my tank on these like on the stalactite things, and I started to get like kind of dizzy. Like they had told us before, if you feel like you've been hanging out at the bar too long, like come up to the top. Yeah. Anyways, we were down to like 140 feet. I started to just get dizzy. With my family, with my brother, we kind of like go away from the group and end up coming up to the top. But I just remember like in the aftermath of that, obviously like adrenaline spiked, just that feeling of like the world, even things that seem pretty contained. Like the Blue Hole is obviously like an adventure, but like it is, the people have kind of gone to the bottom of it. Like it's not that crazy, but like when you're in it and like you just kind of look into that and you realize your own like kind of mortality, you're like, dang, like there could be things here that I like don't really understand. So it's kind of the idea of like embracing that.
I think it's completely possible that human beings have a tendency to explain things that they don't understand with some like mythical story that they like to tell about like the Kraken or, the monster at Loch Ness or, the Chupacabra or Bigfoot or something like that. It's like, it's just like a way for humans to explain things that they don't understand. But I kind of got a question. It's a little bit, I wouldn't say it's off topic. But when you look at history and you look at like not so recent history, there's a lot of things where it just feels like the spiritual forces seem to be more active back then than they are now. Because we look now and it's like we don't see a lot of the stuff that they were talking about back then. Like how in the Bible it talks about how God was like directly talking to people, or people were getting these visions, or like these miracles were happening, like the burning bush, or how like almost like the forces of evil were even more active. Like people were getting possessed and like demons were like doing these things. Is that just like something that doesn't happen today, or like what is your guys' thoughts on that?
So I've actually talked to my father-in-law about this exact topic. He's extremely religious, has studied some interesting things. This is an easy way to explain it. Based on my conversation with him, okay? So back in those days, because there was a lack of religion, there weren't churches, there weren't, what there are today. God had to speak to people differently, right? Like he had to get to people in a different way. But now, and this is my talk with my father-in-law. We actually went through this, and basically in America, I think in almost every city you go to, there's a Catholic church. There is probably a Lutheran church. There's potentially a non-denomination Christian church. Go down a list, and that's the whole, like, that's everywhere in America almost, right? So basically, God doesn't have to speak the same way because he has his messengers there now. And so actually, yeah, they still do this. Like God still speaks to people. But I think what has happened is, 200 years ago, that didn't exist. Churches didn't exist in America, for example. So God had to actually speak to people and say, hey, like, I'm here, right? Like, this is something that, I'm going to get these demons out. But today, see, the demons, they know, okay, there's pastors, there's people that are there, and they're scared of Jesus, right? Demons are scared of Jesus. So because we have kept Jesus so strong and alive in America, I think we have prevented a lot of the problems that used to exist, right? That would be my take on it.
I don't know. I think a big part of it is just like it's so easy to explain away your problems these days because we're all in constant contact. Like you don't get the same space to just kind of let your imagination wander, or to like when I have a problem, or like if I hear a noise in my house, the first thing I'll do is like Google, like, why is my boiler making a weird noise, right? Like, or like I'll get my phone and turn on my flashlight and go figure it out. Like I feel like just where technology is lately, it's like there's less room for your imagination. There's less room for like creativity and solving things in an original way, or like coming up with your own stories. It's more like there's a pretty prescriptive solution to everything online. I think it's kind of a shame because, like, honestly, I think some of the like embracing of the unknown and like it's worth, having be a part of your life.
Yeah, in a society where seemingly all the answers are right at your fingertips, I could definitely see how, now it's like if you hear a weird noise in your house, like you said, you could just Google it and probably get an explanation. Back then, maybe you hear a weird noise in your house, you're like, oh, my house is haunted, I need to go move somewhere else and get a different house. Or like a lot of the ailments that were chopped down is like, oh, that guy's just possessed by a demon. It's like now we're like, oh no, he's just sick. Like we have this diagnosis for what he has. So there's like more explanations that, like, now it seems now it's like we have a lot of logical explanations for what were chopped down as like supernatural phenomena back in the day.
And those things, demons and those things still exist too. So like there's still things in the Middle East happening. You can look up all these stories, but where Jesus is not as connected, Middle East, go down the list, right? Actually, Hulk, like the funny thing is those things are still happening. God is still speaking to people more, right? People are getting demons, and pastors are coming in and trying to, to get them out. But yeah, it's funny. Why does America not see those issues? Well, we are a country founded on faith, right? Like, so even if some people don't believe in it, still, like, think how many people believe in Jesus in America versus the Middle East, and why do they deal with the issues they do? We could say demons are fake, but I think there's something there, right? So I think it's a big deal.
And I also think, like, again, kind of back to the technology thing, but like historically, like people only write things down that they feel very compelled to share and to like write down. And like, if I'm living in ancient Egypt and I want to share something with a friend, I got to, carve it into a rock. So it better be a good story. It's like different than just sending a text.
You think with a lot of these stories they got over exaggerated because there's like a big game of telephone. It's like I wrote something down, and I drew a picture of something, and then I have to send it across the world for somebody else to interpret it, and I can't explain to them what I mean. They just have to look at it and interpret what I mean based on what I sent them. That might be a part of the explanation.
Yeah, totally. Or just like with enough, when it's harder to share stories, like only the most fascinating, most interesting ones can actually stand the test of time. You know, like it's like even if we look at our history, stuff that happened 100 years ago, we kind of, I don't want to say glorify, but like we take the most exaggerated things and those become the story of that era.
Well, I think we pretty much covered everything we needed to cover. I think even on my topic, I think we covered enough to really feel it. So I think this is a good place to stop. This has been the Rest Period Podcast. Thank you guys for listening. Hopefully you made it this far and didn't leave after 1 second. We've been seeing the analytics. We know what you people are up to, clicking on the video and then clicking off. But thank you guys for watching, and this has been the Rest Period. Signing off.
Let us know what we got wrong. We'll debate you in the comments.
Too easy, man. That's too easy.
That is a rest period, as they say.
Windmill for the land, I'm forever hand in hand. Take it all out on your stride, it is taking voting down. Love forever, love is free, let's turn forever, you and me. Windmill for the land, is everybody in.
Laughing gas, these hazmats, fast cats, lining them up like ass crack. Ladies, ponies at the track, it's my chocolate attack. Shit, I'm stepping in harder this year. Yeah, been repping in harder this year. Watch me as I gravitate. Ha 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 ha. Yo, we gon' ghost town, this Motown with your sound. You in the blink, gon' bite the dust, can't fight with us. With your sound, you kill the ink. So don't stop, get it, until you chat ahead and watch the way I navigate.
Windmill for the land, I'm forever hand in hand. Take it all out on your stride, it is taking voting down. Love forever, love is free, let's turn forever, you and me. Windmill for the land, is everybody in.
Don't stop, get it, deep higher captains in it, steady, watch me navigate. Don't stop, get it, deep higher captains in it, steady, watch me navigate.